Have you finished season 11 of The Walking Dead? I'm sure that the supposed official end of the series will have left you wanting more. But what if I told you that that is not the official end of the series? What if I told you that Carl never died? What if the ending is different from what we have been told? I warn you that this video contains spoilers. As you already know, The Walking Dead has surprised us with 3 spin-offs after the end of the series. On the one hand, we start with Dead City, which develops the story of Negan and Maggie in New York. On the other hand, the broadcast of the first season of Daryl Dixon in France has already finished, in my opinion much better than Dead City, and that, if you want, we could make a video talking about what we expect for season 2. But of course now, on February 25th, they are releasing probably the most anticipated spin-off that deals with Rick and Michonne titled The Ones Who Lives, which I already warned you about. We will do a detailed analysis of each episode every week. If you have already seen any of my other videos, in that case you will know that I am a fan of The Walking Dead comics, and although we already know that the comics are totally different from the televised series, having seen or read both allows me to have a critical attitude towards both finals. But first, let's take a look at the final of the TV series. The Walking Dead series finale explains that the assembled protagonists are secretly ushered into the estates, a wealthy gated district where Pamela and her inner circle have taken refuge, condemning the remaining thousands of Commonwealth citizens to death through Mercer's remaining influence among the armored Commonwealth soldiers. Thus, Tommy saves Judith's life, and Mercer can launch his mutiny from inside. The biggest tide-turner is Daryl Dixon's speech, which Rick Grimes originally delivered in the original The Walking Dead comics, borrowing Rick's immortal "We are not the Walking Dead" line, which means that life brings hope for the future, and that the dead should be the living's only enemy. Daryl convinces both sides to lower their guns. Pamela Milton loses her military backing, and the fight is effectively over. Gabriel then opening the gates of the estate and allowing desperate citizens refuge marks a touching callback to his backstory, bringing redemption for the congregation Gabriel abandoned outside his old church, and highlighting his enormous character growth. With Pamela Milton defeated, the zombie herd plaguing the Commonwealth remains the only immediate threat in The Walking Dead's series finale. Because variants are impossible to shepherd like regular zombies, the survivors force a truck through the horde to collect gas from a fuel depot, which they place underneath the estates and ignite after luring the zombies there using music. A neat tribute to the fallen Luke, who employed the same tactic against Whisperers in The Walking Dead Season 10. The Walking Dead series finale explained that blowing up the estates symbolizes a change of social regime in the Commonwealth, with the rich no longer leeching off the masses. The episode ends with Daryl riding the motorcycle in search of Rick. Finally, they would show us the shots of Michonne and Rick to create hype with their spin-off, thus materializing the official return of the character who never had to leave the series, Sir Rick Grimes. As for the final chapter, issue 193 jumps the action decades into the future to explore the world Rick Grimes helped create and left behind after his shocking murder. Just an issue ago, we find Carl, now a grown man himself, trying to find his way in a world that is quickly forgetting the bloody chaos and horror that forged it. He's married to Sophia, and they have a daughter of their own, named in honor of Andrea. It's Carl's story here, but it's still Rick who looms large over it all. He may be gone, but we get a glimpse at the reality all his hard work helped create. The safe zones extend across cities, and the survivors are working to connect with another group across the country, seemingly bringing the entire world back together, realizing the dreams Rick could barely dare to dream back when he first tried to establish a permanent settlement in a hollowed-out prison all those years ago. Rick didn't live to see it, but he won. He rebuilt the world, and there's even a larger-than-life Rick Grimes statue looming above to remind us all who to thank. The central conflict finds Carl at odds with Maggie's now adult son, who runs a traveling roadshow of walkers. One escapes, and Carl kills it. Then he goes back and kills the entire exhibit's worth of walkers, because he's one of the few people left who remember how big a threat they actually are. Carl is a man torn between these two realities, and looking ahead to the stories that won't be told, it's clear the world of The Walking Dead will have a hard time reconciling the deadly crucible that brought it to this point. But that the world is safe enough to have that discussion in the first place is the point in itself. Rick's legend is now told in children's stories, as the closing few pages lay out, the man who saved the world. The actual finale is a far cry better than Kirkman's original plan to wrap up the comic years ago, around issue 72, which he ultimately, obviously, scrapped. The story would have originally ended with Rick giving a rousing speech about fighting for humanity, and Alexandria, then fade out to a statue of Rick's face. Alexandria would have thrived for a while, with a statue built in Rick's honor, but a flash forward would reveal the city has long since fallen, and walkers have long since reclaimed it in the decades to come. The moral of that story? No matter what, humanity is doomed to fail. It was a terrible ending, Kirkman admitted. Bleak, sad, made the whole story pointless. What can I say? I was young, and most of the endings I wrote or came up with back then were pretty bleak. Yeah, we'll take grown-up Carl rocking his daughter to sleep, telling her stories of her grandfather's heroism over that downer every time. Thankfully, Kirkman decided to keep the story going for another several years, bringing us to a much wider world. That extension seemingly gave him the time to figure out exactly what kind of story he was telling all along. It's a story of hope. Sure, the title might be The Walking Dead, but this has always been a story about the living. And in the end, that's what Carl and the world Rick built will keep on doing, living. But now it's your turn. What do you think of the ending that Robert Crayman gave him in the comics? Which ending did you like more? I read you in the comments.